never sleeps, pal.
Hey there, this is Pete Townsend, and welcome to our 19th episode of Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at what makes them do what they do. Money Never Sleeps is kindly sponsored by Top Tier Recruitment, a specialist recruitment consultancy in fintech and financial services. In this episode, we talk to Des O'Donohoe, co-founder and managing director at FundRecs, who provide cloud-based reconciliation software for the investment funds industry globally. Owen knows Des from his own work and also from the Irish fintech scene in general, which is currently booming with over 170 fintech businesses. Not bad for a country with only 5 million people. I've known Des for years, and a lunch with him and one of his co-founders, Alan Meany, in 2016 helped to give me the courage to take the leap as an entrepreneur myself. Thanks for that, guys. I also partnered with Des and Alan and the rest of the FundRecs crew for the Adminovate conference. More on that later. Overall, Des helps to keep me in line by not laughing at my jokes, by being skeptical on all of my views on blockchain, and by changing the topic when I start talking about myself. If Des was with me right now while I'm recording this intro, he'd have pulled the plug already. With that, on with the show. So here we go again. Welcome to the 19th episode of Money Never Sleeps. We're here in Dogpatch Labs in Dublin. I'm Pete Townsend.
And I'm Owen Fitzgerald.
And we're here with Des O'Donohoe, co-founder of FundRecs. Welcome to the show, Des.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Des, we've worked together on a bunch of stuff over the years.
We have.
You've interviewed me. You've asked me questions. I've given you answers that probably weren't the best answers in the house. Awesome to have you here finally. I know your backstory, right? But for Owen, for our listeners, tell us how you got here, how you got to this point, co-founder of FundRecs and all the other things that you do.
Sure. So my background is investment funds since 1998 on the operations side. That's where I started. Started originally in Dublin, ended up in Luxembourg, and then when I came back, I ended up in STI Investments working on the learning and development side of fund accounting, transfer agency, but very fund specific stuff, and then got involved in the product development side of things. So that's my background, and all that while I had an interest in technology. And long story short, myself and two other co-founders actually, Alan Meany and Padraig O'Scannell, who's actually my brother-in-law. Contracts are very specific in FundRecs. We got approached by someone who said, you guys have a lot of product knowledge. We have a very specific problem we want solved. It was on reconciliations, and it's something we knew very, very well. I would say we actually had a very unhealthy competitive advantage. I'd already done this kind of stuff before. We had what a lot of startups don't have, which was a paying client from the very start. So it was accidental. It wasn't a case that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur or have my own business, but the timing seemed right. So one thing that people, I suppose, listening to this might be interested to know, and it's something that I didn't know, the average age of an entrepreneur in this country is 39. Yeah.
I
was kind of surprised when I heard that, but then it does make a lot of sense for so many reasons. One of those reasons was that you don't have the grey hair that a client might like to see coming in the door. You probably don't have a lot of money in the bank. Not that we had a lot of money in the bank, but we had an opportunity where we could partner with somebody that was willing to pay a nice amount of money for us to build a product. So that's where FundRecs came out of.
Were you embedded in SEI when that happened?
Yeah, so I was working there, and I was the last to jump ship in terms of FundRecs. So what we started off with was just kind of a proof of concept, and it wasn't until a couple of years later where I actually ended up joining the company.
So you were kind of doing that on the side?
I wouldn't say not so much on the side. I wasn't really directly involved until I jumped ship.
There's no employment contract still at risk here with SEI.
No, there's not. But that's the way it actually happened. So it was actually Alan and Padraig that had done everything.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where that came from, and it's a funny one. People always say to me, "Well, it must be great to have your own company and all that kind of stuff." And I would probably be not the right. If you were trying to G up a lecture theatre of fintech graduates, I would probably be not the right guy to do that, because I think ostensibly, if you look at fintech companies or any startup, they're probably a bad idea, a lot of them. the odds are very much stacked against you.
Totally.
So we kind of had a perfect storm in that. As I mentioned, we had the skill set to build the product from an operational perspective. We had a very, very good developer in Padraig, and that's one piece of advice I definitely give to anyone that was thinking of starting a fintech or any technical company. If you can get a technical co-founder, it's worth its weight in gold. I would actually argue that if you're starting this company, you need to have somebody that's got skin in the game. They've got equity in the company, because the amount of iterations and pivots that you will do would cost you an absolute fortune if you were to pay developers. Developer rates in this city are what, maybe 450 to 600 euros a day for a Java developer. So that's probably not going to work.
Affordable for a startup. Yeah, it's crazy. It's coming back to your thing. The age, like it seems surprising. It's not like it shouldn't seem surprising. It is. I think people are just used to seeing kind of younger founders and all, the Facebooks of the world where it's all set up by young tech guys. But like MIT did a study, I think they only released it a couple of weeks ago. The average age of entrepreneurs is 44, and like I think it makes a lot of sense because typically it's people with experience in their domain, are creating a company to solve a particular problem versus the likes of a Facebook, which was something that maybe never existed before. That's a different thing, it's spotting an opportunity for something that didn't exist versus building a company like you guys had domain experience. You knew how to build and what the problem was by your years of experience working in that.
Yeah, and I mean the other side of it, but this, I think one message I would definitely want to hammer home to people is when it does come to startups, because I know the media in general, you'll see a lot of very positive lights being shined on companies.
It's a sexy thing to do.
Like it's a sexy thing to do. If you take the ones that are successful, the likes of Intercom, fabulous company and product, we use them ourselves, very good, and Slack, excellent. People need to dig a little bit deeper and look behind. If you look at Slack, that guy I think had 4 startup attempts before he had Slack, and he just kept going. It could have been very easy for him, I'd imagine, to have run out of money, run out of patience, run out of relationships, by the time he actually met a bit of success. So it's something you need to really, really consider. And I definitely, there's definitely a lot of lessons that I would have learned along the way that I would definitely pass on to people, yeah.
Well, I remember a couple that you and Alan shared with me when I was going out on my own, when I was making that decision nearly 2 years ago now. And you said, 1, always have 6 months worth of family expenses in the bank.
Yep.
Which is important.
Yep.
And 2, that the 29 potential bad days that you might have a month are completely overwhelmed by the one good day that you may have every month, right? And that one good day just will last you for the next 29 days.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. I aim for one good day a month. That's what I aim for, and the rest of them are tortuous and difficult and not good because you're trying to fight the good fight. And when you're a small player in an enterprise market, and enterprise sales, for those listening to this, you could be talking anything from, I think our shortest sales cycle might have been 8 days and our longest was 3 years. And that's from initial conversation to actually something cutting you a check and paying you. And the other thing I would say is that the large companies, they like to talk about engaging with fintechs and with startups. But the truth of the matter is until somebody actually pays you to do something, they're not really engaging with you.
What you, with the whole mindset of an entrepreneur, you kind of said this a few minutes ago, that you didn't feel like one, when you got going, and that when you were the third one to the party, really, with Alan and with Padraig. Did I say that right, Padraig? Padraig, close enough. Yeah. I'm getting it after 12 years.
There's probably a FOD in there somewhere with the Irish name. So.
Yeah. How have things changed? How have things changed over the last few years in terms of your own mindset towards the day to day?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And as I said, I didn't set out to. It kind of just fell in my lap. It's just the way it happened. It wasn't really a conscious decision that I said. I had worked for SCI Investments. They're a very good company. I enjoyed working there. So it wasn't like I was trying to, find something else. It was just the timing and how it turned out. Mindset, I've learned so much. For anyone listening to this, there's a great guy, Sam Altman. Anyone that follows startup space and the Y Combinator program, which is a program on the West Coast. It's probably the most successful incubator on the planet. I was trying to think of different lessons learned that I had made along the way, and I think Alan sent me on. I think it's a 16-minute YouTube that Sam had done basically for the Y Combinator program. It was basically on how to become a successful startup, and it's kind of 3 years too late for me because I've kind of gone through the other side of it. You know, we've had scenarios where we had paid bills, wages with credit cards and all that kind of stuff. So that's the non-sexy side that people don't see. But I do think it's important for people to know. But like he had some fantastic pearls of wisdom, and I'll go through a couple of them if you don't mind, because I think it is worth for people to hear this kind of stuff. But and he makes a couple of points, and he was saying, you know, if you're going to build a product, one of the key things is if you can get people to talk about that product and recommend it to their friends, that's gold dust. I mean, he would say, you know, 80% of the job is that people actively talk about your product. Even in the investment fund, like we focused on the investment fund administration space. And we know people talk about FundRecs and how it makes their day better. I mean, nobody wants to manually tick and bash anything. So for us to automate it, that's a win. And because there is an incestuous nature in fund administrator in that people move jobs. And that's very good for us because they're our best salespeople, because they'll move to another fund admin or investment management house and they say, well, why are we doing this in Excel? Excel would be our biggest competitor by a distance. And it's nice for them to tell their new companies, you know, there's a better way of doing this. So build that product that people will talk about, that's for sure. It needs to be simple to explain, otherwise there's a lot of unclear thinking there. The market has got to have room to grow, and it's got to be a real market. So there's been a lot of talk recently around virtual reality, but it's been kind of a fake trend in that it's something that everyone thought this is just going to explode, but it hasn't quite exploded just yet.
Yeah.
I believe it will, but it hasn't, and you cannot be the person that's left holding the baby, because you're going to run out of money. And you know, the biggest problem that most companies in general have, whether it's startup or not, is cash. You know, running out of cash. So you've got to make sure it's a real trend. Enthusiasm goes a massive long way. You've got to be so enthusiastic all the time. And if you're the guy that's trying to run a company and you're not enthusiastic, don't expect anyone else to be, because it does come from the top, as they say. You need to be really, really realistic with your expectations. Everything takes 3 times as long and it costs 3 times as much.
That was one of the other things you said to me back 2 years ago.
Absolutely bang on. I'm a big fan of the Stripe brothers, Patrick and John. Patrick recently talked about the first 10 hires that they had, and I would echo what he said, in that he said the first 10 hires that you have are going to shape the next 90. And you need to be so careful about who you're bringing in, not just from a technical perspective, but from a fit. Like, will they actually fit into the organization? So that's a very hard one to get right. And I'm going to use the word lucky, because there's a lot of luck involved here. We've been very lucky in the group of people that we've gotten together to work with us at FundRecs.
And we just had Chris from Flender on the show last week, and he was talking about that culture piece. You know, was trying to identify the right people, because, you know, as a startup, you may not be able to offer the salaries that they'll get somewhere else, but you really need to identify the right people. I saw it in Future Finance, whereby we brought in people not only with the skill set, but who wanted to be part of something and were able to be part of something, because that drove then, you know, when you were filling out the team, that kind of everyone else bought into that same message because they saw the senior people engaged in it.
Absolutely. And the other thing I would say is, if you're thinking of a startup, don't go after something that you think is easy, because if it looks easy, and if it is easy, there's a couple of problems with that. There probably isn't a market or a problem that you're actually trying to solve that you can make money from, but also people want to be challenged. And when you talk about the top end developers, they don't want to try and solve simple they're not interested in that.
Yeah, no, I've seen developers leave businesses because they're just no longer challenged. Right? They want to move on to the next great thing, especially those in the 20 to 30-year-old bracket. You see that a lot. What you said about culture is quite interesting, Des. That book, Sapiens, by, what's his name, Yuval Noah Harari, I think is his name. It talks about when you get up to 100 people in any culture, group, setting, whatever, that's as far as you can really go with people believing in the same thing without it being written on the wall, right? Once you get up to 150,
to beyond that, that's where the only way that things can survive in a single mechanism is if you've got gossip and rumor going around, and that spreads the word, right? Without intercom and messaging boards and things like that. You guys are now at the stage where you've got the award from Bank of Ireland, is that right? Where you got sponsored to open the office in New York?
Yeah, it's Bank of Ireland's Start Lab. It's an excellent program. They have given us and 6 other companies office space in a wonderful setting and building in Manhattan. So we're actively moving to New York at the moment. We have perfect product fit for that market. It's just ideal for us.
Yeah, and with that, you're on the tipping point of going scale, right?
Yep.
And getting, and up to as many people as you think this business is going to be. Without putting a number on it, obviously it's, who's to say a business today of 500 people, is something that with technology and where it's going could stay flat at 500 people and still grow to a revenue that would need, another 1,000 on top of that. Yep. Where do you want this to go?
So that's a very good question. And just a couple of points I'd make there on scaling a team. One thing that and Sam Altman talks about this, one thing you'll have to do as a founder is you'll transition from being a product-focused guy, focusing on FundRecs and parsing files and the ability to streamline processes, to actually focus on building a team. Okay, because FundRecs at the moment, the product is matured, it's just ready to go and it's ready to scale. Now, one thing that would have saved we're cloud only, and we made that decision from the very start that we were not going to go local install. That's paid dividends. It nearly closed their doors at the start, where 5 years ago the market wasn't quite ready for cloud only, and now cloud only is what they want. So that was a gamble, but a bit of luck, that worked, and so we only use cloud. We use Amazon Web Services, as I mentioned. So when you go from the product, getting the product right, then there's other problems. You got to go to building the team. Your question is in relation to how large a company can it be, and it's a tricky one to answer.
I've seen the ethos, right? Because I've sat down with you guys, and in your Westmoreland Street office, right? And I know how you guys all interact. And when you bring new people into the team, you're incredibly welcoming. When Frida came in last year, that was fantastic, and that kind of open embrace of new mindsets and new ideas is fantastic for your business. That will obviously become more challenging. How do you keep that open-mindedness as being part of your ethos?
So one thing that's worth explaining, I suppose, is our business model. It's software as a service, and for people that aren't familiar with what that means, is we provide the technology and the company itself uses their own resources to use that technology. Now, what's really good about that is it means we can scale as a company, and we're on client number 16 at the moment, and they're enterprise level clients, and people would say, well, how can you possibly service 16 clients in multiple jurisdictions? And it's true technology. So it's using clever tech. I mentioned one of them, which is intercom. So our average response time, and people find this very hard to believe, over the last 90 days is 4 minutes. So that's not a case where an issue or a bug is resolved within 4 minutes. It's a case where we've gone back to the client, but this isn't a bot, this is a person going back to the client saying, yeah, we're aware of this, we can see it, we're taking care of it. That really goes away from the old model of vendors that I would have used when I was working in fund administration, where you send a ticket off to a black hole and 2 weeks later you get a response, if at all, and the response is typically no. But we were obsessed with customer service from the start, but that customer success is enabled by technology. So long story short, I don't know how many staff we will end up having, but it will be significantly less than the old school firms where they didn't have clever tech that actually allows you to scale.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, the U.S. market is ripe for what you guys are doing. there are so many fund administrators in the U.S., so many small market fund administrators. And it seems like because it's an unregulated business there, that anybody at a senior level in a fund administration company, if they get upset about something and they get in a disagreement with their boss, but they have a fantastic relationship with 3 or 4 or 5 clients, they could just leave and go start their own fund administration company with some of the typical known software out there and get it going, and pay the bills and pay their salaries. That to me is completely unnecessary, and there's way too many fund administrators out there. I think what you guys can do is to help those fund administrators to reduce costs, to make things more efficient, and that it's just the country rather than the world, but the country, the United States, is your oyster right now.
Absolutely. I mean, our biggest competitor at the moment, people always ask us, who's your competition? It's Excel. That's who our main competitor is. That's what people use. And one thing I learned along the way is technology is a lot cheaper than people think it is. In terms of, I would have always thought, well, if you move from a manual process to an automated one, that's going to cost you money. It doesn't. There's none of our clients that we have currently that it's more expensive for them to use FundRecs than to do what they were doing, whether it's manually or through Excel or Visual Basic macros and all that kind of stuff. It is much, much cheaper to use a software as a service, basically. It's much more inexpensive.
Just changing tack a little bit, one of the reasons I always enjoyed dropping by in Westmoreland Street to talk to yourself and Alan is that I kind of find both of you are what I'd call maybe students of entrepreneurship, or whatever is the best way to describe it, but that you're guys who actively look to learn. So something that comes up a lot is that we come across the value of mentors, but there's a really good talk on YouTube. I think it was a TED talk possibly by a guy named Ty Lopez, and it's around mentors and the value of what they can bring to it, but not only a personal mentor, but also what you can get from books and from people's lives and their stories about what they've done in the past. And you're talking here about the lessons learned from the likes of Sam Altman. Every time we're talking, we're always talking about stuff that we're reading or stuff that someone has seen or listened to, which adds a huge amount of value. That's obviously something that both yourself and Alan kind of live through and are involved in. Anything you don't know, you actively kind of look to learn, or you're open to learning a huge amount. And we had Chris Addles back on recently, and he talked about the best founders they want to work with are guys who are open to mentors and learning and understanding and taking kind of instruction and stuff like that. How important is that to you guys as a team, and then yourself as well?
I think it's essential. I think it's just, I don't understand why you wouldn't do that. I don't understand why you wouldn't shortcut your success by actually looking at people that have already been either very successful or very unsuccessful and try and figure out, well, what did they do that we can avoid doing? For example, one question that I get asked a lot is, what mistakes have you made in the past? I would have made an awful lot more mistakes had I not read different biographies and autobiographies from people and talks from people that are kind of saying, well, don't do this, for example. A lot of people, if you were to take VC funding, for example, they will say, now you need to hire. That's all well and good, but the problem with the hire is you're then increasing your burn rate massively. It's a full-time job to hire those people. And the reason I mention this is, people think if you take funding, for example, that cures a lot of problems. It does, it gives you a whole lot of cash, but that cash can't sit in the bank. That's got to be spent so that you can scale the company, because that's what you told the VCs you were going to do. The problem with that is your company might not be ready to scale like that, and you might have a lot of people sitting around that you don't have new revenues to cover and to pay for. So I read quite a bit from one case study where they scaled massively. They took on, I think they took on, let's say they were a company of 50, they took on another 100 staff, and it nearly buried the company because they went too fast, too quickly. So even reading that kind of stuff makes you kind of think, it's a fine line, right? It's chicken and egg stuff. You need to have the sales, but you also need to have the customers that are willing to pay for these new salespeople as well. So that's.
Is this the context of a bootstrap business? Right?
Yeah, well, we bootstrapped quite a lot of FundRecs, and it wasn't that. It's not an equity thing. It's a product maturity and ready to go to market thing where we could have taken, we've turned down VC funding and buyouts on numerous occasions. And the reason you do that, the reason you turn down a buyout, first of all, it's way too early. But second of all, you can see the potential of a company that will scale. but you need to be patient. And one of the key traits I think anyone can have in the startup world is patience. Right? There's two things for me: patience and being really, really stubborn in terms of not giving up. Because you'll have so many bad days. I read a very funny article the other day where it might have been Pat Phelan, ex-Trust Dev. He's a great guy, and he was saying that somebody was looking for some advice from him, and he said, "Sure, I can meet you at lunchtime at 1 o'clock or whatever." And the guy said, "But that's lunchtime." Pat thought, well, if that's your mindset, maybe you shouldn't do this. I mean, there's that expression, if you have your own company, you only have to work half a day and you can do anything you want with the other 12 hours. And that's very true. If you're a worrier, startups are not for you. They're not healthy for people if you're a worrier. Now, we're very lucky.
But it keeps you up at night, though. What's the difference between worrying that's not worrying and not staying up at night?
That's healthy anticipation of what's next in the journey.
Anxiety and the stress of it.
Yeah, some people are definitely not cut out for startups because they are difficult for so many reasons, as we've discussed quite a few of them. I would say if you have an idea, you need to really, really, really have a good hard think. And you know, if you say, for example, well, nobody else is doing this, I wouldn't look at that as a healthy thing. I would be very concerned.
There's a reason why.
There's a reason. There's a reason why somebody isn't already doing this. And don't listen to your best friend or your mother or whoever is going to tell you, yeah, that's wonderful, son, you can do anything. Go out to the market and see what the market thinks about it.
Yeah, good luck.
But having advisors that'll be honest with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And who do you go to, I suppose, in those situations?
So I would actually go to the market. So we have a new product that we will be shipping, and it came out because of the reconciliations. And one of the reasons reconciliations are difficult is, and file processing in general is difficult, is there is no consistency in terms of data formats, whether it's a Swift file, XML, PDF, whatever it is. There's no consistency, so you need to be able to deal with all of those. So there's a spin-out product that we have coming out that will be a template builder for anybody to take any file in any format, pass it through a utility and pass it on its merry way. The reason I mentioned that is you asked the question, well, what do you do when you're not sure? So we have gone out to the market and said, well, if we build this, would you buy this? And the answer was, yeah, we would. That's how you test the market.
Yeah, that's A/B testing. A bit of it.
A bit of it. But that's what you have to do, and you have to be honest. And if they say no, you have to find out why no. And if they say yes, then you have to find out why yes, and how much would you pay.
Yeah.
You know, and
customer discovery.
Customer discovery. The biggest.
My wife, I said that to my wife, and she's like, "What do you mean customer discovery? That's market research."
Potatoes.
Stop using your big starting puppy words, Pete.
Like the number one mistakes I see startups making, and we didn't do this because I had read that don't do this, and that was having your minimal viable product and bringing it to market way too late. So that is you build a beta prototype of what it is that your product is going to look and feel like. But people wait way too long to ship that.
Yeah.
You get it out there as quickly as you can, because it's going to pivot and it's going to change anyway. So don't delay. Just get it out there and test the waters and see, well, would somebody pay for this? And until somebody actually, puts pen to paper, you actually don't have anything. For us, I knew we had something when you have a company that's going to pay you a six-figure amount of money to build a product that you can actually scale and resell.
How does your family put up with you with all this, Des?
In general, or just or with FundRecs? It's good in that I do a lot of video interviews, as you know, and I showed one to my son, and I said, "Well, what do you think about that?" He said, "Oh, it's very interesting. I now know what I do not want to be when I grow up, and that's you." So that's all right. Keeps you grounded. No, it's good in that. The product is really simple to explain. That's one of the things actually that Sam Altman had mentioned, and I think it is true. Even the name FundRecs, everyone knows that works in this space. They know we know what they do, and that can be quite difficult to actually do.
But you guys are doing more than funds, so I mean, there's an applicability there that's far wider with the whole robotics kit.
There is, yeah. Machine learning is something we're very focused on, and I don't use the term machine learning to try to be smart, because I'm not, and it's not me that's going to be applying the techniques. Machine learning, the difficulty with it is you need a lot of data, and the data needs to be extremely good quality data. The whole idea of machine learning is that the system can make a decision based on what's gone on in the past. If you don't have the data of what went on in the past and it's not clean data, you have a problem. So machine learning is a term that's thrown out a lot. We're looking at it and have been for the last year, and we hope to have it integrated fully, I would say. We already use machine learning techniques within FundRecs, and robotics is by its very nature of what FundRecs is. It's one big robot anyway. There's a lot of overuse of terms: AI, machine learning, clever algorithms, fuzzy logic, all these things. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. If the product does what it says it can do, that's all you need to concern yourself with. There's an awful lot of products out there that wave, like blockchain and all these different things. They will come in some shape, make or form, but you need to see them actively in the market, solving a problem, and people paying for them.
Blockchain's just a technology, right?
Correct,
rather than a product, right?
Correct.
So I mean,
correct.
But that's the key thing. I totally get that. With just back to kind of outside of FundRecs with a day-to-day, Owen said, who do you lean on? And obviously going out to the market when you're doing new product design is one thing, but from a personal perspective.
Founders, yeah, so there's 3 of us, and that is fantastic, and I'll tell you why. Because if we have a vote, and we have a lot of votes on different things, company direction, new hires, whatever it might be, you can't have a split vote. And that might sound really simple, but it isn't. If you've got 2 people and it's you and me, Pete, whatever it might be, you have a tie, whereas with 3, you can't have a tie. You either all agree or someone doesn't agree, but there's a majority, and that's fantastic. But that's luck. In terms of who I lean on, definitely Alan and Padraig on the technical side. We let him do, he's got carte blanche to do whatever he wants, so he does that, and then myself and Alan take care of the business, finance, sales side of things, and that works very well. So in terms of who we lean on, it's definitely each other. And then the other guys, Kieran and Brian and the whole team down in Waterford, it's a group effort, and that might sound a bit cliche, but it has to be. It has to be a team effort.
Cool. So tell us, what are you reading at the moment? Anytime we talk, we're always trading stories of books.
Yeah, so I just finished actually Bad Blood, Terranos, which I found absolutely fascinating in terms of the worst case of corporate governance or lack thereof that I've ever seen. I actually read it on holidays. I think it took me 2 days to read it, and I'm not a very quick reader. It's an excellent book. I would thoroughly recommend that as how not to do it. There's another book that I read recently enough, and it's very entertaining. It's called Hatching Twitter. So it recounts the story of how Twitter came about, and there was one excerpt from it from Mark Zuckerberg that I found very funny, where he describes it as Twitter as 4 clowns drive into a gold mine, discuss. So, but it's all good stuff. But I read an awful lot of not self-help books. That's not true. It's more on
self-awareness.
More on how things went really well for certain companies and how things didn't go so well. I watch an awful lot of YouTube.
But I mean, it's about your own learning, I suppose.
Absolutely.
When I say self-awareness, it's about you learning something that might be useful to you.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I just don't understand people that might think, well, I'm always right about, or that, just believe in yourself. I think take a look and take a balanced scorecard. If you've got people that are very successful, like the Cullison brothers, I think that, look, the truth of the matter is when it comes to startups is you're guessing at a lot of things, right? So if you can lessen the guesswork, you're going to have a far more positive outcome, hopefully. But if you just are guessing and shooting in the dark, there's so much help out there. And the Dublin startup ecosystem is extremely vibrant. There's a lot of help out there. I mean, EI, we're an EI client, Enterprise Ireland, and they've been absolutely fantastic to us over the entire thing. So there's loads and loads of help out there for anyone that actually seeks it, but you have to seek it. Like, you have to
be open to it. Yeah.
You have to be open to it, but you also have to. There's WhatsApp groups as well with a lot of CEOs on it, and they're fantastic. Like, you might have a question, might be to do with employee law or contract law, it might have, and you can just reach out to those guys and get an answer from somebody who's already done it.
Well, look, I think to wrap it up, thanks for being on the show. What's something people wouldn't expect to know about you?
I'm a really bad drummer. So I had my midlife crisis a couple of years ago. So I haven't got my convertible Porsche because I can't afford one just yet. But
you bought a drum kit.
I
didn't know this.
It was. See, this is the thing about it is, to be a bad drummer is really, really easy. There's a famous quote from the Beatles where John Lennon or Paul McCartney, one of the two, was asked, was Ringo Starr the best drummer in the world? And they said he's not even the best drummer in the Beatles. So.
And how have you become a bad drummer?
Less accomplished. I didn't think it was actually possible to get worse at it the more you practice. I always thought you're supposed to get better, but that hasn't worked out. Hopefully my kids will be better than me.
You read a lot, you watch a lot of YouTube.
Yep.
You somehow practice the drums a tiny bit.
Yeah.
Do you sleep?
Yeah, plenty. Kids are a bit older now, so sleep isn't a problem, so it's all fine.
All right, well listen, thanks so much for being on the show, for sharing all that with us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Des.
We'd like to thank Des for opening up his mind for the 19th episode of Money Never Sleeps, a podcast brought to you by Owen Fitzgerald and me, Pete Townsend, and sponsored by Top Tier Recruitment. You can learn more about Des and FundRecs on fundrecs.com. Please subscribe to Money Never Sleeps on transistor.fm, iTunes, Spotify, or on your favorite online media channel. If you like what you hear, please leave us a review on iTunes, tell all your friends, and spread the good word about Money Never Sleeps in general. If you're an entrepreneur with a story to tell anywhere in the world, drop us a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie. We're about to go international. As I mentioned in the intro, I also partner with FundRecs for the Adminovate conference at Trinity College Dublin, which is next up in January 2019, and tickets go on sale this week. Check out adminovate.ie to get yours. We'd also like to thank Conan Brophy from Create Sound for recording and editing this podcast, and thanks to Dogpatch Labs for hosting us and for their unwavering support of the startup community in Dublin. Owen and I will both be speaking at the Blockchain for Finance conference at Aviva Stadium in Dublin on October 3rd and 4th. We'll interview the first 5 people who find one of us at the conference and says, "Money never sleeps, pal," and then we'll feature your interview in an upcoming episode. Till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!